Good morning, and welcome to the Church of the River here in beautiful downtown Memphis, Tennessee. My name is Reverend Sam Teitel, and I have the joy of serving this congregation as your minister. Just a few quick announcements before we get started this morning. First of all, if you are new to our worship service and joining us for the first time, we welcome you to this virtual worship service that we are having, and we are excited to meet you in person once we are having in-person services and events again as a congregation. And we invite you to hang out at the end of our worship service today, and you'll see some announcements on your screen, and that will include a link to a connections card where you'll be able to fill that out, and then we can send you emails with updates and our weekly announcements and really get you connected in at the Church of the River. Tomorrow is the deadline to submit nominations to this year's nominating committee. This is a team of people who are going to be nominating 2 new members of our Board of Trustees and 3 people who will comprise the nominating committee next year. If you really want to step into a leadership role at the Church of the River, please feel free to nominate yourself. If you know somebody else who you think is really well suited to that work, please feel free to nominate them. Send those nominations via email to nominations@churchoftheriver.org, and please get those in no later than tomorrow. For more details on these and other Church of the River events and activities, including the several million Zoom meetings that we are having every week, please see the announcements at the end of this worship service. Subscribe to our weekly mailing list by emailing connections@churchoftheriver.org, and as always, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our worship service will now begin. So just like last week, we're going to continue bringing you information about what is going on currently in this pandemic and what kind of steps you and your families might take to best pass through this pandemic together. We're bringing you that information from medical professionals who are members of our Church of the River community here. So this week, I would like to introduce Vania Lewis, who is going to share that information with us.
Hello, Church of the River family. I'm here to talk about coronavirus or COVID-19. As some of you may know, we have just had the hardest week of the pandemic in the United States. It is important now, more than ever, to practice social distancing and staying at home. I'm also here to address what to do if you need to take care of someone with COVID-19. First, I have to say if the person you are taking care of or yourself is over the age of 65 and has underlying conditions such as respiratory disease or heart disease, professional medical help needs to be sought out. There are 4 main points when taking care of someone with COVID-19. The first is to monitor for emergent signs and symptoms. Second is to prevent the spread of infection. Third is to treat symptoms. And fourth is to know when it's safe to come out. First, watch for emergent signs and symptoms. These signs include chest pain, increased trouble breathing, a bluish tint to the lips or the face, increased confusion, or new onset lethargy or just trouble waking the person up. If any of these symptoms were to occur, you need to seek professional medical help or call 911 and get to a hospital immediately. Second is to prevent the spread of infection. This can be done by keeping the person to one bathroom, one set of dishes, one set of linens and a towel, as well as wearing a mask when you're 6 feet from this individual, as well as having them wear a mask. It is also important to thoroughly wash your hands, as we all know, 20 seconds, and then using a hand sanitizer that has at least 60% alcohol in it. It's also important to sanitize surfaces, and that includes countertops, but also hard to remember surfaces like doorknobs. We need to be making sure we're sanitizing these surfaces really well to prevent the spread of infection. Third is to treat symptoms. Fever reducers such as Tylenol can be used to help with fever, and it is important, and I mean very important, to stay hydrated with water or Pedialyte. Fourth is to know when it is safe to come out. The CDC recommends that the person be fever-free for 72 hours without the use of fever reducers. That's 3 days without the use of medicines like Tylenol or ibuprofen. Also, the person needs to be symptom-free for 7 days. So we're looking at about a total of 14 days being isolated from other people, with 7 of those being symptom-free. For more information, you can go to cdc.gov. I hope to see you soon. Please stay safe, wash your hands, and we'll get to the end of this, I promise.
Let's all take 3 deep breaths. We gather grateful for the bumps in the road, grateful for the trials and tribulations, for the headaches and the heartbreaks, grateful for the moments when we have fallen on our faces, grateful for the moments when others have picked us back up, for the moments when we have had the opportunity to pick others up, for the moments when we have had to learn how to pick ourselves up. We gather carrying with us the moments of despair, the moments of grief, and the moments of love, the moments of connection, all of the moments that seemed to comprise all of those things at once. And we gather carrying with us the moments of rebirth, the moments when, just when all seemed lost, life managed to bloom forth in ways that we never saw coming. We gather grateful for all of the moments in our lives that have led us to this place on this day, that we may come together in worship. We light this chalice for the challenge of freedom, the goal of equality, and the warmth of community. May all who gather here offer and find the blessings of acceptance, loving kindness, and a grateful heart. Amen.
Good morning and happy Easter. This is not the Easter we had planned at the Church of the River, but here we are, doing the best we can. We're having an Easter egg hunt virtually, so look for those Easter eggs in this video and on our social media platforms. The story I'd like to share with you is about joy, eggs, and struggling to find the daylight. The joy is actually a person, my friend Joy Berry, a religious educator who right now is part of the FOS Collaborative at Meadville Lombard, our Unitarian Universalist Seminary. But Joy has become a friend and a spiritual advisor also by teaching me the art of observing chickens and eggs. There are lots of videos that Joy generously shares. Some of them are called Hen Zen, and it's just a few minutes to sit quietly and watch her hens. She has very special hens. They lay eggs that look like they've been colored for Easter. They're really pretty, and I hope you can find them on Facebook. I'll send you the link. The story of one particular egg hatching is what came to mind this week when I was struggling about finding hope and that other kind of joy when it really seems dark. One night I was watching Joy's egg hatch, and this little chick was struggling so hard to actually come out. It was zipping. That's what a chick does when it makes a mark all around the egg in a circle, and it keeps pecking its way out. And this chick had found its way sort of halfway out, but it was struggling so hard to break free, to find that light. And Joy is a wise teacher, so she has taught me that the chick has to do the work itself. If we try to help it too much, we actually do more harm than good. So for what felt like hours, I was bearing witness with Joy to this chick, struggling and struggling. It would struggle for a while, and then it would just fall over and have to rest. And then it would gather its strength again. And I ended up going to bed before I saw the chick emerge. And all night I was worrying, not sleeping well at all. I was so relieved the next morning to find that that little chick had been stuck to a little bit of membrane that had dried and was keeping it from breaking out. But after resting and struggling and resting and struggling some more, that baby chick survived. That brought joy too. So that got me thinking about what we have to do sometimes. We can have people all around us that are taking care of us, making everything the best that it can be under the circumstances so that we can thrive. But the actual work of breaking out of whatever is holding us back has to be ours.
When the eggs are under a mother and they're hatching naturally, they have to do this all the time. They have to push against all the other eggs. And a lot of resistance, just trying to get out of the egg. Oh, I see a toe. I see claws. Come on. Figure it out.
Happy Easter. See you soon.
Our first reading this morning comes to us from Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. Dandelion wine. The words were summer on the tongue. The wine was summer caught and stoppered. And now that Douglas knew, he really knew he was alive and moved, turning through the world to touch and see at all, it was only right and proper that some of his new knowledge, some of this special vintage day would be sealed away for opening on a January day with snow falling fast and the sun unseen for weeks or months, and perhaps some of the miracle by then forgotten and in need of renewal. Since this was going to be a summer of unguessed wonders, he wanted it all salvaged and labeled so that any time he wished, he might tiptoe down in this dark twilight and reach up his fingertips. Better that putting things in the attic you never use again. This way, you get to live the summer over for a minute or two here or there along the way through the winter. And when the bottles are empty, the summer's gone for good, and no regrets and no sentimental trash lying around for you to stumble over 40 years from now. Clean, smokeless, efficient. That's Dandelion Wine. Our second reading comes to us from the Gospel according to Luke, chapter 24. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly two beings in dazzling clothes stood before them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, but the beings said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified and on the third day rise again." Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen clothes by themselves. Then he went home, amazed at what had happened. So continuing our practice of bringing in a guest to lead us in prayer from somewhere in the wider Unitarian Universalist world, I am so excited to introduce you to our guest this week. Our guest is Meredith Jeremiah, who is a student at Harvard Divinity School and who will be starting this coming September here with us at Church of the River as our ministerial intern while she gets ready to get ordained. So it is my delight to introduce to you Meredith Jeremiah.
Loving God, Spirit of life, it is Easter Sunday, and we gather together this morning hungry, longing for ancient stories to bring new hope, to bring something we can cling to. For we gather here with weary hearts, some of us, hearts carrying the grief of the world within them. And some days it just feels too heavy. The extent of the death, the fear, and the hurt can feel like too much to bear. We are a people seeking comfort, seeking hope, seeking something to carry us forward. What does the Easter story have to say when devastation surrounds us? Our circumstances right now have cut to the heart of the matter. In this time, the important things in life have become so clear. We long for human connection, for the touch of those we love, for the ability to gather as a community of faith. And the things that matter less, those have become clear to us too. Maybe we are to give thanks for the clarity that has come with this new way of living, this new way of being. Each time we open our eyes in the morning, each breath and beat of our heart becomes noteworthy. And with each breath we exhale, thank you, thank you, thank you. We give thanks for our place in the interconnected web of all existence. In the words of St. Francis of Assisi, life can be a prayer. The Easter story, if anything, is one of hope. For in the midst of suffering, hope rises up. In the midst of our human despair, creation is ringing out with hope that rises from the ashes. In the daffodil, hope rises up. In the new baby, hope rises up. In the budding trees, hope rises up. In the bird song, hope rises up. All creation is ringing out with a song of hope this morning. Let us give back the song.
So you might have noticed that throughout this service, there's been different little Easter eggs around me, around the pulpit. This is a fun little virtual Easter egg hunt for the young people in our congregation to make up for the fact that we can't have a physical Easter egg hunt this year. And, it's kind of silly. It's kind of out there, but this is a time when I think we can all do whatever is in our power, within our ability, to support the people around us who we care about. And part of supporting our young people means doing silly little things in the service, and part of supporting our adults who might find the eggs to be silly or distracting means not having the eggs there during the sermon itself. And another way that we all support each other is by supporting this church and by supporting the work that this church is continuing to do in our community and in our world. So if you would like to support this church, there are instructions for how to do so on your screen right now. The offertory for the care and sustenance of this congregation and its work will now be graciously given and received. My friends, I know I said last week that I had never missed you all as much as I did in that moment, but I gotta tell you, this week it is especially hard for me to not get to spend Easter Sunday with all of you. Easter Sunday can be a little tricky for Unitarian Universalists, and so I'm just telling myself that I'm looking forward to next year when we can all navigate these sometimes choppy waters together in person again. Easter certainly has Christian connotations, right? A story about the death and resurrection of Jesus, and it also has its pagan roots as a celebration of spring and fertility. And even though many of us, including myself, are not exactly Christian or exactly pagan, I think there is value in trying to take a look at both of these perspectives and both of these stories and traditions and see if they have anything to offer us this morning, even just as metaphors, right? I myself don't believe in the historical factuality of the gospel narratives, but I care deeply about them as stories and as parables. And, I don't know about y'all, but stories and celebrations of rebirth and resurrection sound like exactly what I could really use right now. The Easter story that our Christian kindred tell today is the story of the resurrection of Jesus. In the story, noted activist and rabble-rouser Jesus of Nazareth has just been arrested and executed by the Roman government, and his body has been placed in a tomb. And after 3 days have passed, a group of women from Jesus' community, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Joanna, arrive at his tomb to ritually prepare his body for burial. And they find that the stone blocking the entrance has already been rolled away, and Jesus' body isn't there. And then 2 angels appear in front of them, and the angels ask, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, for he is risen." And so the women go back to the apostles, who were Jesus' students and confidants, and the apostles are all just kind of sitting around together and presumably trying to figure out what their lives are going to look like now that their leader has died. And so the women tell the apostles what they've seen, and at first the apostles don't believe the women, but eventually they go and they check it out and they realize that the women were correct. The Bible doesn't include the scene where the apostles apologize to the women for not believing them in the first place, but I like to think that it's sort of implied. So many of us have our own relationship with this story and our own memories of hearing this story. My connection with the story changed a little bit in 2016 when I was in Israel, and I had the opportunity to visit the tomb that in the Protestant community is traditionally believed to be the tomb where Jesus was buried. The tomb is in this beautiful first-century garden that was uncovered by archaeologists, and the garden is traditionally believed to be the Garden of Gethsemane, which is the place where Jesus was arrested. And, I couldn't possibly speak to the accuracy of those claims either way, but it is a garden and a tomb from the right time period, and the tomb looks about right. It has the traditional rolling stone. It's interesting. I always assumed that when it said, the stone was rolled away, that it was just kind of, a big round boulder that someone had kind of, shoved on its side, right? But the stone, it's kind of a giant stone disc, and it runs on a track, and you do just kind of roll it away. I find these things interesting. But what I remember most vividly about the experience is that when I was there, I spent a lot more time walking around the garden itself than I did in the tomb. The garden is beautiful, and it's my favorite kind of garden, which is to say that it's like sort of maintained, but also like sort of allowed to do its own thing. Like there are paths and stone walls and all that, but the plants look like they really grew there, right? And it wasn't just somebody sort of art directing them. I remember feeling so much more connected to the garden than I felt to the tomb. And so I've been thinking about that connection, right? That connection to the wild and semi-wild parts of the world as I've been getting ready for this Easter. And also thinking about them as I've been reading this book called Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury. It's a series of very lyrical short stories based on memories from Ray Bradbury's childhood. It takes place in a small town in the Midwest during the summer of 1928, and it has been a truly fabulous escape from everything going on in the world right now. And the book contains this amazing passage about how every summer they make jars of wine out of dandelions. And they put the wine away in the cellar so that in the depths of the harsh Midwestern winter, they can go downstairs and open a jar and experience a little piece of summer that has been preserved for them. Right? The wine gives them just this moment of goodness and brightness in an otherwise very bleak time. I feel like this is a moment when a lot of us have been holding on to our own kind of dandelion wine. We've all been looking backwards and forwards, holding on to memories or hopes that will help us endure this time, which is a time filled with so much fear and so much grief. And I know last week I talked all about staying present and giving ourselves to the moment that we are in, and that remains true. But it is important to learn to live in the present without allowing the present to eclipse everything else that has ever been or will ever be. Part of being firmly grounded in the present is knowing who we are and what has made us who we are. Everything we have ever done and loved and dreamed and hoped that has landed us here and now. My wife, Sandra, remarked to me the other day that being present is not static. Right? What presence mean can look different depending on the day and on the need. I think about the apostles, right? Before the women came and told them about this resurrection, just kind of sitting around and thinking, this is it, right? It's over. He's dead. And, experiencing what must have been such an unbelievably painful loss. And, I just kind of see them sitting there in this this loose circle and starting to just share the memories that they had. Telling stories about their adventures with their friend Jesus. And that, in its own way, is a quiet little kind of resurrection. It didn't bring back their friend, but it brought back a part of them. It helped wake up the part of each of them that was still hopeful and inspired, like a shot of dandelion wine on a cold night. And that's a lot of what the pagan understanding of Easter is. It's a holiday about rebirth and fertility, right? And hence the bunnies and the eggs. Those are pagan symbols of rebirth and fertility. It's a holiday about the earth waking up after winter. But I've also always seen Easter as being about something internal as well. I've always seen Easter as a recognition not just of the flowers blooming out of the earth, but as a celebration of the hope and the goodness that can bloom out of each of us, and that was always a part of us, even if sometimes it got buried. I mean, I gotta tell you, the most pagan moment of my spiritual life happened in the tomb at the place that is believed to be the Garden of Gethsemane. I just kept standing there and thinking that I felt the presence of God so much more before I walked in there. And I thought, Easter doesn't happen in the tomb. Easter happens in the garden. Even when we are in the tomb, Easter happens in the garden because the garden is a part of us. The dandelions that we can pick that will bring back the parts of us that we have lost, they aren't in here. They are inside of us, and we need them to survive. And so I want to tell you about a specific kind of dandelion wine that has been helping Sandra and I get through this particular moment. This past February, on Valentine's Day to be exact, Sandra and I found out that we are expecting our first child, who will be born around the end of October. And we were joyful, and we celebrated, and we cried. Our February was pretty great. And then March happened. It is difficult to explain how surreal it is to be expecting a child in the middle of a global pandemic. It's a bizarre combination of feelings, right? I think about the future, and I have so much joy and hope for my own family, and it shows up right alongside the fear and anxiety that I feel about what is going on in our world. It feels like when a friend shows up at your house and you really did, like you tried to get it clean before they got there, but they get to your house and your house is just a mess. And I keep wanting to look at, my child to be and say, I promise it isn't always like this. Like, don't get me wrong, it's never perfect, but even for us, this right now is particularly bad. But part of what living through this time has meant for me and for Sandra has been carrying the knowledge of the goodness that is possible in our world, right? Our own little container of highly concentrated dandelion wine, and letting that be what propels us forward. I think about these two angels who confront the women at the tomb and ask them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead?" And that's always struck me as such a bizarre question, because of course that's what they're doing. What else could they do? What else is there to do? When we are surrounded by death, what can we do except look around us for signs of life? Signs that hope and goodness still exist in the world and are still inside each of us. I think about this moment, this moment of Jesus coming back, like the actual moment in the story, which doesn't get a narrative, so we get to infer a little bit here, but you think about his lifeless body is lying there in the tomb, and then suddenly he takes a breath, right? And his eyes slowly open, and then he sits up and shakes the dust out of his hair and looks around. Right? The moment when he hasn't yet gotten up and walked out, but he's just there in the tomb, back in his horribly injured body, only a few days after the unthinkable ordeal that he has just endured. And I imagine him sitting there, having just experienced this really potent example of all of the violence and the evil that humanity is capable of. But also knowing, right, like knowing deep in his heart that that is not the whole picture. Knowing that he has not always been in the tomb, nor has he always been on the cross, I imagine him sitting there and gathering up the memories that he has, right? Memories of his parents who were dark-skinned immigrants who brought him into the world under very difficult circumstances and who always somehow were able to make it work. Memories of his apostles who he loved, who always asked the wrong questions and often drew the wrong conclusions, but who were always willing to listen to him when he challenged them. Memories of his friends, Lazarus and Mary and Martha, who welcomed him into their home and each took care of him in their own way. Memories of all of the little children that went running to him at his invitation. I imagine him sitting there and thinking about all of this. All of these little jars of dandelion wine. And then making the decision to get up and walk out of the tomb and give his ministry to humanity once again. And that is resurrection. Not the moment when he goes from being dead to being no longer dead. Resurrection happens in the moment when he allows his faith in the love and goodness that are possible in this world to be stronger than the pain that he is feeling in that moment. And in that same moment, the apostles are all sitting around somewhere still thinking that all is lost, not knowing that their friend is alive again and not quite yet able to know that resurrection is always possible, even if it doesn't take the form that we are expecting. And so here we all are, on this day that is supposed to be filled with celebration and rebirth, locked in our homes, uncertain about the future. But we have to also remember that for us too, resurrection is not only possible, it is possible right now. It is possible when we remember and believe in the life and the sweetness that still exists in this world, when we allow our hope to come not from the future or the past, when we allow our hope to come from the lessons that our hopes for the future and our memories for the past have taught us about who we are and what is good in this world. And we ground ourselves in that knowledge. This day, and all days. Amen. Go. Encounter the world at its cruelest until you find compassion. Go. Encounter the world at its ugliest until you find beauty. Go. Encounter yourself at your worst until you find that you are a beloved child of God. Go in peace, and amen.